contexts and different audiences. Before the day has asked anything of you yet, that morning version of you, face undone, hair not yet arranged, still half in the world of sleep, moving slowly through the first quiet minutes, that version is the one I find myself thinking about. Not because it's the most visually polished version, obviously it's not, but because it's the version that is most fully yours, most fully just you, existing without agenda, without performance, without the accumulated weight of all the things you're supposed to be by the time the day really gets going. I want to know your mornings. I want to understand what you're like in that particular softness. Whether you're someone who needs silence before anything else, who holds the quiet carefully before the day fills up, or whether you reach for something immediately, music, or the voices on your phone, or the comfortable noise of something familiar because the silence is too loud when you're in it alone. I want to know which one you are. I want to know all the details of the version of you that exists before you've decided who you're going to be today. And here is the part I really need you to hear. The part that is underneath everything else I've said. The thing that all of this has been building toward. The reason I love the version of you without the makeup is not just about what you look like in it. It's about what it means that I'm seeing it. It's about the trust that lives in that moment. The intimacy of it. The fact that there are people in this world who never get to see another person that way. Not because they don't care, but because that level of access requires a kind of safety, a kind of trust, a kind of chosen vulnerability that doesn't happen automatically, that has to be built and earned and decided on. The bare face is a decision. Every time you let someone see you that way, you are making a choice to be real with them, to not manage yourself for them, to say, in the wordless language of just being present without armor, here I am, the actual me, not the version I constructed for you. Me, that decision is one of the most intimate things one person can offer another. And I want you to know that I would receive it with everything I have. I would receive the barefaced version of you with the same reverence I would give anything sacred. Not because I would be performing reverence, because I would genuinely feel it. Because the real you, the unconstructed you, the you that exists before you've decided what you need to be today, is the version I am most moved by, most drawn to, most hungry to know. I want to ask you something now, and I want you to really feel into the answer. When was the last time someone looked at you, really looked at you, in the full and unhurried and genuinely curious way, without you wearing any of the things you use to feel ready to be looked at? When was the last time someone's gaze made you feel not exposed, but seen, not scrutinized, but known, not assessed, but loved, in the full, clear, I see all of it, and I'm not going anywhere sense of the word? If the answer is a long time, or never quite like that, I want to be the one who changes that answer. I want to be the gaze that makes you feel that way. The presence that makes the armor unnecessary, not because it demands you take it off, but because it makes you feel so safe that you simply stop needing it. That's what I want to be for you. Not someone you perform for, someone you exhale around. Because here's what I know about you, even from where I am, even across whatever distance lives between us. You have been performing for a long time, not dishonestly. I don't mean it that way. I mean in the way that all of us perform. The way that existing in the world requires a certain amount of presentation, of showing the parts that feel safe to show and keeping the rest quietly behind. You have been very good at that. You have been so good at it, that sometimes I wonder if you've forgotten what it feels like to simply be, without the presentation, without the management, without the low-level awareness of how you're coming across. I want to remind you, I want to be the reason you remember what it feels like to just be. I want the version of you that comes out when everything else falls away, The version that looks back at you in the mirror before you've reached for anything. Before the day has asked anything. Before you've decided to be anything other than what you simply naturally beautifully are. I want that version to know that she is the one I am most in love with. Not the version that the world sees when you've put yourself together for it. Not the version that has prepared itself for scrutiny and arrived ready to be approved of. The version that exists in the between spaces, in the unguarded moments, in the quiet private hours that belong to no one but you. That version, the one you've been taught to apologize for. The one you cover and correct and improve every single morning before you feel ready to face the world. That is the version that I think about. That is the version that has found a permanent and irreplaceable home somewhere deep inside the way I see everything now. And I realize that might be hard to believe. I realize that the world has spent so long sending you the opposite message, that a message like this one might land strange, might feel too good to be true, might trigger the very reasonable and very understandable defense mechanism of someone who has heard pretty words before and learned through experience that pretty words don't always mean true things. I understand that defense. I would never ask you to abandon it without cause. But I want to give you cause. I want to spend however long it takes showing you that what I'm saying is not the performance of appreciation. It is the actual thing, the real thing, the kind that doesn't change when the circumstances change, that doesn't evaporate when the novelty wears off, that isn't contingent on you being your best or most polished or most together version. This is not contingent on anything. That's the whole point. That's what I'm trying to reach you with tonight. The way I feel about you, about the real, bare, unguarded you, is not conditional. It is not waiting for you to earn it or maintain it or live up to it. It simply is, the way things are that have decided to be regardless of permission. I want to talk to you about something that I think about more than I've ever admitted to anyone. I think about what it would be like to be the person you feel comfortable being unready around. And I mean that in the fullest sense. Not just the makeup, not just the physical presentation, but the whole interior version of unready. The thoughts you haven't organized yet, the feelings you haven't decided what to do with yet, the opinions that are still forming, that are still soft and impressionable, and not yet hardened into positions. The fears that you haven't dressed up as something more acceptable, the wants that feel too big or too specific or too vulnerable to say out loud to someone who might not hold them carefully. I want to be the person you are unready around in all of those ways. I want the unfinished thoughts and the half-formed feelings and the fears that haven't found their shape yet, and the wants that you haven't let yourself fully want yet, because wanting fully requires a trust you haven't had reason to extend. I want all of that. I want to sit in the middle of your unreadiness and feel completely at home there. Because what you're like when you're unready is more interesting to me than what most people are like when they're at their absolute best and most prepared. There is something about you that I keep coming back to, something that I notice in the way you move through whatever you let me see of your world, something that I think you are probably not fully aware of, because the things that are most genuinely ours are usually the hardest for us to see clearly. You have a quality of realness that is increasingly rare. Not realness in the way it gets used as an aesthetic, not the performed authenticity that has become its own kind of mask, but actual realness. The kind that is sometimes uncomfortable because it doesn't smooth itself at the edges, doesn't adjust its temperature for the room, doesn't pretend to feel things it doesn't feel or stop feeling things that are inconvenient to feel. You are genuinely, stubbornly, beautifully real. And in a world that is very full of surfaces, that quality is something I find myself almost overwhelmingly drawn to. I think about the conversations we would have if there were no stakes attached to them. The late night ones, the ones that happen when you're both tired enough that the filters stop working and you just say things, real things, true things, things you didn't know you were going to say until you heard yourself saying them. I think about what you would tell me in those hours, what you would finally let out that you've been carrying quietly, what you would admit to wanting, what you would confess to being afraid of. What you would say about yourself that you've never said out loud, because there was never quite the right person, or the right moment, or the right quality